I was born at my mother's house, and my father was a principal of the Buchanan School in Topeka, Kansas. When I was 12 years old, we moved to Tucson, Arizona, when my father was offered a job as a principal at the all-segregated Black Dunbar School.
My great-grandfather was born a slave. My great-grandfather, they were part of the Maxwell House coffee plantation in Tennessee. My grandfather grew up in Kansas.
My mother was a teacher at Marana, and she was, the school, they were segregated everywhere, and so she taught the black students from the 1st through the 9th grade. And they were all their families were cotton pickers. My mother and I used to go out there every weekend and talk to the parents, ask them why their kids didn't go to school, and my mother would say, the education is worth more than the money you'll make picking cotton.
District policy prohibited Mrs. Morgan from teaching at the same school as her husband. Dunbar was built in 1913 and was originally known as the Colored School. It consisted of 2 rooms with no cafeteria or auditorium. Those, along with 23 classrooms, were not built until 1948, 8 years into Morgan Maxwell Sr.'s tenure as principal.
And I was the only student in the Tucson district who went to the same school where their father was a principal. We had excellent teachers. They would tell the girls, you have 2 choices, either be a maid or get an education. And with the guys, you had 3. You could either be a maintenance man or go into the military or get an education. And why our teachers were the best, there were no black engineers, there were no black bankers or architects or any other field, but there were blacks who were trained in those fields, so therefore our teachers were the best.
At my grandfather's school, he made Time magazine because he was the only principal who didn't have a police officer on his campus, because he was afraid that the police officer would interview these kids and get intel on their parents. So he was trying to prevent kids from having records and parents from having records.
In 1951, by state law, Arizona schools began to be integrated, slowly, but a few years ahead of most other states. Education, however, is only one objective of a community. Segregation and racism continued to exist throughout Tucson.
It was totally segregated as far as the restaurants at the theaters. Like at the theaters, at the Fox Theater, we had what is known as the crow's nest, that we would sit in the top 3 rows. And when I went to high school, friends of mine like Carl Eller and Frank Borman and all my white friends, we would meet and go to the downstairs at the popcorn stand at the Fox Theater. Then I'd go upstairs, and they'd all stay on the 1st floor, and then we would meet afterwards. There were several parks here, but the only park we could use was Ori Park, and they would change the water every Saturday morning, so we would swim in the dirty water Friday. All of the restaurants were segregated, but it changed when the civil rights changed, when the civil rights laws were put on the books.
Not all establishments immediately complied with the legally mandated integration. Some businesses required more persuasion, like a notable Tucson restaurant on the old Benson Highway.
It was the only place where blacks could not eat, so we all said that has to stop, so we went down to the Pickwick Inn and we blocked the doors. And I was standing in the doorway for hours, and we wouldn't let anybody through.
While attending the University of Arizona, Maxwell was told he couldn't take an international finance course because blacks couldn't get a job in that field. He graduated with a finance degree and later received an MBA from USC. In 1961, Maxwell began a long and successful career in real estate appraisal. Through his expertise, he alone was able to navigate the obstacles that stood in the way of the sale of a house to the first black head coach of a major university. That was Fred Snowden, with the U of A, in 1972. Maxwell continued his steadfast fight for justice throughout his career. He served as the chairman of the State of Arizona Civil Rights Commission under 2 governors. His example and his accomplishments are a legacy for the community and for his family.
My dad, he really didn't, he was a very modest person. I knew more about my grandfather. My dad was very modest and didn't really brag about anything. We would talk about it at dinner, and I didn't really appreciate the significance of what he did at that time. Because as a youth, you think you know everything, and it's hard to comprehend. Until I got older, did I really realize how important that was. My dad always told me to have integrity, ethics, to always be the best, and to work hard, and to treat others with respect, and to be open to people. Include them, don't exclude them. I work as a lawyer and I work as a professor, so I get to give back to the kids. Being a professor, I tell them where I screwed up. I try and guide them in the right direction. And in the legal practice, I'm a prosecutor, so I get to dole out the punishment, and I get to make judgment calls as to where mercy should be made and where someone should be punished. So I think with my background, I'm fair and ethical, and I try and do that with every person, every victim, every defendant. I try and listen to them and make a sound decision. It's ironic how history tends to repeat itself. What's good about it, though, is I think that we are getting a younger generation with fresh eyes, fresh ideas, not as much baggage that has been going on with the generations before. So I think they'll be able to handle it a lot better.
Those young people include another generation of Maxwells. Skyler, a track star like her grandfather, excels on a path he helped open for her.
I like to run because I do track and field and cross country. And I like to play sports, but I also love to do math and science. I might want to be an engineer, and I think that education's good for doing that. I think that it shouldn't be discriminated because everybody's the same inside, just maybe not outside. My parents have just taught me to respect people no matter what they look like.
I hope she just enjoys her life and is happy. That's really basically all we want for our children, to get a good education, to be happy, to live this life, that is better than the generation before.